All right, what's up? This is Owen Higgins. I am interviewing Dead Prez. It's been about 9.5 years since the Dead Prez riots at Evergreen. So we just wanted to talk to you guys about that, and let's flip it around.
I like to call it. I don't call it the Dead Prez riot.
Sure.
More than anything, I call it the Evergreen Evergreen State Uprising.
Sure.
And because it happened on Valentine's Day, I sometimes like to call it the Saint Valentine's Day Uprising. So, I just want to say to that community who we've been linked with in a really strong way since that happened. I really appreciate you guys, and your courage and your strength as students in that time has made an effect on the terrain in Washington State, Oregon, and the Northwest, and has contributed to my experience in a fantastic way. It's been 10 years, but what I want to say is that the resistance hasn't gone down any. We just left the Northwest area, Bellingham, Seattle, Spokane, and the rest. And I got to say that the fervor, the revolutionary fervor, and what made the resistance so high then at Evergreen State is still evident there now. Even with like this alt-right stuff that's happening in North, and I think to me. It is a snap back to the fact that there's so much progressive action and talk happening and been happening in the Northwest for so long that that you're gonna see obviously the polarized, ugly head rearing of that kind of part of our
Right.
people. So, I just want to say that, and respect to Evergreen and the Uprising, and let's commemorate it with more organization, commemorate it with being stronger and faster, smarter, being better organized, better, healthier, and continue to do what you're doing. You know what I mean? Evergreen forever. 100.
Right on. What was some of the results of that situation?
Skycon?
Well, so that event was particularly memorable for us because we had been organizing around the port military resistance. They were using the Port of Olympia and Port of Tacoma to ship out heavily armed military vehicles from Fort Lewis, which is the most heavily armed and invested in military base on the West Coast. And for about a year and a half, we had been engaging in these skirmishes with the police and continuously being pushed back. And the Valentine's Day uprising was like sort of this linchpin moment for a lot of us activists, where the first time we were able to push the police back. And even if it was temporary, even if it was symbolic, like it was a fantastic evening for all of us that were there, and it influenced us for the next 2-3 years that we were all in school, and we were continuously citing that as like a political victory for us. And so I feel personally that it was a pretty integral part of my political development.
Sean?
I'm just gonna go with Sky on this one.
Okay, cool.
I want to say for me as well too, to add on to what you're saying, like every single year I have been in contact with someone from Evergreen campus. Every single year since then. 2 years after I came back and did and said something about on the campus, and then we go back and we're in Seattle and we meet an organizer who's now organizing with women's rights or sex workers' rights, and then we go back and now I'm just in contact with somebody who's working on progressive cannabis organization, and I meet people who obviously who have rooted themselves in different parts of society, who are part of that particular skirmish that has affected their life. So I love it when revolutionaries are made, because it's hard to unmake a revolutionary. When you make a revolutionary, it's very hard to unmake a revolutionary. But it happens. But believe me, when you're forged in steel of what happened like then, and you see the the National Guard come in, which we had never seen as Dead Prez, we'd never seen, and I've been in a lot of stuff. You know what I'm saying? And mind you, it had nothing to do to me with Dead Prez at all. We just happened to be on the campus at a moment with students and organizers and people who had it up to here in the right way and expressed it in a way that needed to be expressed in order, whether good or bad, whether police cars got turned over, whether computers got smashed, or whatever somebody learned from that, which I think more positive than negative. It was impactful on a lot of people's lives.
Did that have any impact on y'all as a group? Is that an important part of like Dead Prez history? Like, what is the relevance of that event to like not only your lyrics but like how your politics materialize?
Yeah, well, we on that tour, you know, we was headed to more schools, and I remember some of the routes was canceled. You know what I mean? And you know, and so we was like, all right, hey, that's part of the game. You know what I mean? It was some gangster shit. Just, you know, we came outside, we seen people in trees and trees on fire and all type of shit. So, like M said, we didn't know the whole context, or you know what I mean, at the time or whatever. So, you know, it's definitely a story to tell, you know what I mean. But as far as our, you know, history, you know, it's really the people, you know, and what was going on, and we happen to witness it, you know what I mean. So, but in that, you know, you always inspired when you see just a day when the plantation ain't just calm and the regular shit is going on, you know what I mean? So that was inspiring, and we, you know, we've been in those kind of scenarios, you know, a lot, you know, in different ways. So yeah, I didn't expect that from Evergreen College. You know what I mean? I thought it was just gonna be, you know, every regular shit at a school, and next thing you know, shit was on fire. So I think it just showed that, you know, when people get ready, you know, to express the will in whatever way they choose, like it can be formidable, you know what I mean? And at the end of the day, you judge things like that, not just in the explosion of the moment, but like you guys saying, all of the benefits that come from, you know, that kind of inspiration, you know. And so it seemed like it was a good thing. Might need to do another one.
You know, for me, like when you hear about the organization of like the G20 that's happening, back then it was the G8 that happened, and that really was something that. So I think like the reason why they can't have the same kind of governing in the same kind of way, like you know, like Rod and G say, Ungovernables, like which is the theme concept of what's happening here while we're here tonight in Brooklyn. Decolonize the hood, Ungovernables. Check the reason why the G20 can't happen and the crisis in imperialism has deepened the way it has is because of that. 100% directly connected. The reason why they can't govern the same way, the reason why they need an inane or inordinate amount of extreme pressure, and it can be an alt-right that has a position now, and a person like Donald Trump who seems, like I said, inane and just in his being, is due to the fact that that kind of pressure was able to be put on by people who internalized politics at a young age. At that time, it wasn't happening. We had an older movement, an experienced movement that was fighting from a more theoretical, come from a place that was like old theory. These are young folks who had never, who wasn't in no organizational political education classes, and they were brave, and some of them stupid, but a lot of them learned a lot of great things.
Yeah.
And like I said, until this day, like, you know, I definitely Dead Prez has been affected. I went around and talked about. I was already lecturing, but I went around and talked about that thing forever after that. And then you know, like we were there was a fear for us that it would be a backlash against Dead Prez that would prevent us from, you know, being able to basically why we use hip hop as a way to live.
That's
you know what I'm
school
saying?
show money.
And but it didn't, and I'm happy that it didn't, and it could have gone a lot of different ways. You know, we've seen things like that happen to Tupac, and we've seen stuff like that happen to other artists who've been involved in struggles in that way, and we were lucky to come out of it unscathed in that kind of way, without any legal turmoil.
So, I mean, as you both know, and Evergreen is going through another period of, I guess you would call it, unrest. The school was shut down for Thursday and Friday because there was an active shooter threat from somebody on the alt-right who's reacting to the quote-unquote free speech controversy that's going on there. Anything that you guys would want to say to the students there, or
I'm glad you said that, because another point that I just wanted to put in context is the other side. You know what I mean? Like it was inspiring and it was important, you know, in that moment. But you also got to look at the repercussions of certain things. You know what I mean? When you set some shit on fire, when you whatever, you know, people can get hurt. You know what I mean? People go to jail for a long ass time, and you know, caring about people and what happens to people, not just moments in history, but actually what happens to people. You have to think about, you know, what's at stake. You know what I mean? And use those great sacrifices for a real tangible forward motion, you know what I'm saying? Because I don't know if everybody felt like that, you know, it was a great moment. Some people might have got railroaded and all types of shit in that time. So, and then that can affect that person to say, and what was this shit worth it? You know what I mean? Did we advance anything? And then that person might drop out of the whole progressive, you know, movement because of their experience. So, or, you know, people justify, you know, shooting people now because of this and that. So it ain't no game, you know what I mean? It ain't a game, and sometimes as youth, I know when, you know, earlier, we used to do shit just out of raw courage and just emotion, but it's a lot of people sitting in the box for a long time and not really thinking wise and mature too. You know, so I think it's a place for all types of resistance, right? You know, but I don't want to glorify or over romanticize those kind of moments if it's not apparatus and networks in place to take care of people who make certain kind of sacrifices, you know what I mean? So
I want to say this about the alt-right is that you know, in that space, you know, people assume that the Northwest is like this, like kind of like place of Hippieville, you know, just like left-leaning, you know. It's so untrue. You know, this was the escape of the most radical right into a place that could have like this kind of utopia that was blacklist. You know, there's not a lot of people of color in the Northwest.
Right.
People know this. And people will go to the Northwest and they say, wow, so extremely liberal, and it's a lie. It's a lie, because what has lived there is the same culture that was wanted to separate from African people and people of color from the beginning.
Yeah.
That racist mentality didn't go anywhere. It was just in its own vacuum and wasn't allowed to be ugly because none of us were there to be beaten, or at least nobody was gonna say nothing about it.
Right.
So it's courageous to be a youth who comes up under this so-called like kind of hippie mama and daddy, and I know these people, and to know that they really don't like black people, but now you do, and now you got to deal with it. And so they stand up and they're courageous. They didn't do what some of my friends did in North Carolina or Florida They don't like, they fuck with me in the streets. They won't take me to the house. They don't even so I commend those are the students at Evergreen. And like Stick said, they stuck their necks out, and luckily, because I went back every year since, none of them went through nothing. It's luck. It was luck, and it was luck that we didn't, right? But that was a great test. That was a great test, and it was also awesome because before, see, this alt-right shit been happening. So now, what we're able to see is that it's not just in its own, it's not operating in its own place like the Michigan Men or Middle America, which is generally like Trump states. Like, nah, it doesn't go without a resistance. The resistance was said before they were able to talk about freedom of speech. You know what I mean? So that's what I commend on. And to me, that's the difference between being reactionary and revolutionary. We don't want to be reactionaries. And those young men were not reactionary. They were progressive. They were on the ball, ahead of the ball, and different than a lot of people have been being in a lot of different places on the map, like St. Louis and the rest of it that's been going through all kind of upheaval, you know, without certain answers and stuff like that. So, you know, be careful, like Stick say. We learned from our past. We got OGs. We got plenty of OGs.
Trust.
But at the same time, I'm glad that we were able to learn that lesson without so much of a sacrifice. You know what I mean?
And I'll just add this. This is Stick. I'm saying like this: get out of them boxes. You know, get out of they boxes. It's not no game. If you're not training, if you're not skilled in playing around with, you know, setting shit on fire, you know, and them bullets start flying, it's not a game. You know what I mean? People will die. People will go to jail for a long ass time. Families will be fucked up. You know what I mean? And a lot of times people get reading books and shit and get real political and saying all kind of shit, but are not training for the repercussions of a lot of those kinds of things. And even as artists who we talk about certain things in our music, over time, I feel I had to take more responsibility. You know what I mean? Because people get like a battery in their back. You know what I mean? And like the glory moments and all that type of shit. But you know, it's a long-term thing. And so I want to say, you know, don't get caught up in an ideological box that gets you fucked up. You know what I mean? And if you're talking about an armed struggle, you know what I mean? If you're talking about an armed struggle, without the training and the network and the community development and all of that really takes, and the medical expertise and the survival skills and the underground everything, if you out here talking about that and not really doing that in your everyday life, it's a joke. You know what I'm saying? And it, you know what I mean, don't waste energy and don't waste time. Like, you know what I mean, do it for real, or find another way to resist. That's something you can handle. You know what I mean? Because you know, when them shots get a popping, that shit is real. So yeah, man.
Be about it. See you on the front line. Hey.